Yavuz Selim Mosque. The Yavuz Selim Mosque, also known as the Selim I Mosque and the Yavuz Sultan Selim Mosque, Turkish, Yavuz Selim Camii, is a 16th century Ottoman imperial mosque located at the top of the 5th Hill of Istanbul, Turkey, in the neighborhood of Çukurbostan, overlooking the Golden Horn. Its size and geographic position make it a familiar landmark on the Istanbul skyline. History. The Yavuz Selim Mosque is the second oldest extant imperial mosque in Istanbul. It was commissioned by the Ottoman Sultan Suleiman the Magnificent in memory of his father Selim I, who died in 1520. The architect was Alaüddin, Acem Alisi. 3. The mosque was completed in 1527-8. Attempts have been made to associate the structure with the famous imperial architect Mimar Sinan, but there is no supporting documentary evidence, and the date of the mosque is too early. However, one of the turbe in the garden of the mosque is a work of Sinan, see below. Architecture. Exterior. The mosque was built on a terrace overlooking the cistern of Ispar, the largest of the 3 Roman reservoirs in Constantinople. The large courtyard, avlu, has a colonnaded portico with columns of various types of marble and granite. The mosque itself is decorated with very early examples of Ionic tiles. The mosque is flanked by twin minarets. Interior. The interior plan of the mosque is a simple square room, 24.5 meters on each side, covered by a shallow dome 32.5 meters in height. As with the Hagia Sophia, the dome is much shallower than a full hemisphere. The windows are decorated with lunettes of Ionic tiles. To the north and south of the main room, domed passages led to 4 small dome rooms, which were intended to function as hospices for traveling dervishes. The turbe. Located in the garden behind the mosque and overlooking the Golden Horn is the turbe of Sultan Selim I. The building is externally octagonal, and has a porch decorated with panels of tiles of unique design. A second octagonal turbe with a long inscription carved into the stonework of the exterior contains the tombs of 4 children of Suleiman the Magnificent. It dates from 1556, and is attributed to Mimar Sinan. The third turbe in the garden is that of Sultan Abdülmecid I, built shortly before his death in 1861. Ottoman architecture. Classical period, 1437–1703. The classical period of Ottoman architecture is to a large degree a development of the prior approaches as they evolved over the 15th and early 16th centuries, and the start of the classical period is strongly associated with the works of Mimar Sinan. 8–9. In this period, Ottoman architecture, especially with the works, and under the influence, of Sinan, saw a new unification and harmonization of the various architectural parts, elements and influences that Ottoman architecture had previously absorbed but which had not yet been harmonized into a collective whole. 8. Taking heavily from the Byzantine tradition, and in particular the influence of the Hagia Sophia, classical Ottoman architecture was, as before, ultimately a syncretic blend of numerous influences and adaptations for Ottoman needs. 8–9. And what may be the most emblematic of the structures of this period, the classical mosques designed by Sinan and those after him used a dome-based structure, similar to that of Hagia Sophia, but among other things changed the proportions, opened the interior of the structure and freed it from the colonnades and other structural elements that broke up the inside of Hagia Sophia and other Byzantine churches, and added more light, with greater emphasis on the use of lighting and shadow with a huge volume of windows. 8–9. These developments were themselves both a mixture of influence from Hagia Sophia and similar Byzantine structures, as well as the result of the developments of Ottoman architecture from 1400 on, which, in the words of Godfrey Goodwin, had already achieved that poetic interplay of shaded and sunlit interiors which pleased Le Corbusier. 8. During the classical period, mosque plans changed to include inner and outer courtyards. The inner courtyard and the mosque were inseparable. The master architect of the classical period, Mimar Sinan, was born in 1489–1490 in Kayseri and died in Istanbul in the year 1588. Sinan started a new era in world architecture, creating 334 buildings in various cities. Mimar Sinan's first important work was the Selim Mosque, completed in 1548. His second significant work was the Suleiman I Mosque and the surrounding complex, built for Suleiman the Magnificent. The Selim I Mosque in Edirne was built during the years 1568–74, when Sinan was in his prime as an architect. The Rostem Paşa, Mihrimah Sultan, Ibrahim Paşa mosques and the Sezade Kanuni Sultan Suleiman, Roxolana and Selim II mausoleums are among Sinan's most renowned works. Most classical period design used the Byzantine architecture of the neighboring Balkans as its base, and from there, ethnic elements were added, creating a different architectural style. Citation needed. Examples of Ottoman architecture of the classical period, aside from Turkey, can also be seen in the Balkans, Hungary, Egypt, Tunisia and Algiers, where mosques, bridges, fountains and schools were built. The Yavuz Selim Mosque is the second oldest extant imperial mosque in Istanbul. It was commissioned by the Ottoman Sultan Suleiman the Magnificent in memory of his father Selim I, who died in 1520. The architect was Alaüddin, Acem Alisi. 3. The mosque was completed in 1527-8. Attempts have been made to associate the structure with the famous imperial architect Mimar Sinan, but there is no supporting documentary evidence, and the date of the mosque is too early. However, one of the turbe in the garden of the mosque is a work of Sinan, see below. Mimar Sinan was the chief Ottoman architect, Turkish, Mimar, and civil engineer for Sultan Suleiman the Magnificent, Selim II, and Murad III. He was responsible for the construction of more than 300 major structures and other more modest projects, such as his Islamic primary schools, Sibyan Mektebs. His apprentices would later design the Sultan Ahmet Mosque in Istanbul, Stari Most in Mostar, and helped design the Taj Mahal in the Mughal Empire. His masterpiece is the Selim I Mosque in Edirne, although his most famous work is the Suleiman Mosque in Istanbul. He headed an extensive governmental department and trained many assistants who, in turn, distinguished themselves, including Sefkar Mehmet Agha, architect of the Sultan Ahmet Mosque. He is considered the greatest architect of the classical period of Ottoman architecture, and has been compared to Michelangelo, his contemporary in the West.